Welcome to the webinar. You have entered as an attendee in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to this BCS Future Elite session webinar where two inspirational leaders in the world of testing will share their career stories and advice with us. Today we're delighted to hear from Phil Urmson, a squad lead at Hermes, and from Amber Haywood, a test manager at Burberry. We'll hear from Phil first and then Amber, and at the end we'll have a question and answer session. Please submit questions as we go along, as they occur to you, via the chat function on your GoToWebinar control panel. Thank you very much, and I'll hand over, Phil, to you.
Thanks, John. Start showing. Okay. Hi everyone. Yeah, thanks to futureELITE for organising the event and asking me along to present. So I'll talk through my journey in testing. Just a little bit about me. So this is me and my fiance. We got engaged in Iceland just before the lockdown started, and this is the house we bought last year, which keeps us quite busy, doing a lot of jobs, DIY jobs. If you want to contact me afterwards, I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter with the handle there. So yeah, I'll talk through my journey and then I've got a few insights to share. So I graduated from Lancaster University with a maths degree, and as many people, didn't know where to go from there. So I applied to work in a lot of banks, thinking that there's a lot of opportunities there, and I got pushed back. So I then started in a bookies to kind of get cash handling experience, and I eventually did get a job in a bank and took a secondment as a test analyst, and that was the first flavour that I got of testing, and that's where I did my ICEB foundation, which really gave me that passion to go further with it. Once my secondment had ended, I was back as a cashier in a branch, and that's when I moved to Leeds to start as a tester for Jet2. It was a growing company at the time, and it was a really good experience for me, so I'll delve deeper into that. So yeah, as I started as a tester, I was still quite fresh to tech in general. My role was creating test cases, executing the test cases, reviewing requirements, raising and tracking bugs, and just reporting to my test lead and learning about testing as I was going along. Fortunately, after that, I was promoted to test lead, and my role was still quite hands-on, still creating test cases, executing test cases, but I was starting to write more test plans and reports, organising regression phases, and a big part was the line manager and interviewing that came with that role. And then as the company grew, as the teams grew, I got an opportunity to take on the role of test manager. And that was across the e-commerce platforms, looking at the front-end websites as well as the services, the APIs behind those sites. And we grew from when I started 2-3 Scrum teams to having 15 to 20 Scrum teams. And what I realized was that as my role changed and adapted, I was now creating test strategies. I've moved recruitment into its own area. I was considering roles. Is tester the right role? Do we need a test engineer role? But I was still overlapping with the test lead in terms of regression phases. I was now line managing test leads, and I was still involved in kind of design and requirement meetings for projects. But as I got further into that test manager role, I started to realize that as much as it was a promotion, it was a new career. It was separate to what I'd been enjoying, what I'd doing as a tester. And I was losing focus on my technical abilities, which is the part of the job that I really enjoyed. So moving back to my journey, as I say, Jet2 was a really great experience. I got a lot of learnings, met a lot of good people. But in August last year, I moved to Hermes with the squad lead title. So as a squad lead, there's a lot of transferable skills. I'm managing now developers and testers. overseeing the whole software development lifecycle, automation testing, manual testing, liaising with business stakeholders, creating those third-party kind of relationships, analysing live issues, ensuring logging and monitoring is there. And it was a more rounded role that fits my skill set. I'm still involved with interviewing candidates, looking for the right people. And what Hermes was, the images here are quite relevant. The people, it's a very people-focused business. They do got a lot of good things for their colleagues, and fortunately this year we were very busy. The tool set, so they use cloud services. Again, quite an interesting part to the technical industry at the moment. And the processes that they have in place all seem to fit together with my views. So this slide just represents the kind of tool set that I've touched on in my journey since 2014 in tech and testing. And what I wanted to show is that the tool set you use, it could be widespread, but the real focus is on the people and the soft skills, and people often lose sight of that. You get people coming into roles and saying, this is the tool we need to use because that's what I've been using, but you can transfer that across so many. I wouldn't bog yourself down in a tool and look to still learn and take on new experiences. So that's a whistle-stop tour of my journey, and along that way I've learned a few insights, so I just wanted to delve into some of them. So what is testing? It's a big question. I think it can vary depending on where you are, but it is a feedback loop, non-functional requirements validation. But to me, it's all about risk mitigation. You can always draw everything you do as a tester back to mitigating risk. So in terms of the software development lifecycle and testing, there's all these different types of methodologies. There's Scrum, Kanban, Scrumban. And within that, there's a lot of practices that go across those methodologies. And it was probably when I was working in the bank, and it was a very waterfall project, that I discovered Agile, and I discovered the Agile Manifesto, and that's very wordy, so I've just cut them down. And those values I keep coming back to in every role I have. As a company, we want to be agile. Are we meeting these values? Satisfying the customer, delivering frequently. You could pick 2 or 3 that you may be doing, but some that you may not. And I'd say that gives you the fuel to kind of make change within your company. So yeah, this is the classic waterfall project. Testing fits into that small slot there. Most of you have probably experienced it. And when you find a company is moving toward that agile ways of working, what you tend to get is agile. So it's these small waterfall projects within your sprints, whether that's 2 weeks, 3 weeks. But your test time is still very small. You're still waiting for these different events to occur before you actually start testing. And what Agile is about is testing across the whole product build. The real mindset shift for me was considering not do the features work, but is the product healthy? You know, also the shift left. Are the requirements? Are we building the right product? This was a nice diagram that I found on the Ministry of Testing site, which is a really good resource for all things test. And it just shows that the same activities occur in Waterfall, Agile, and then DevOps, but maybe at more frequent rate. And how do you get there? That's a different presentation. Then there's also this from Dan Ashby on his blog in 2016. So DevOps is the new term that a lot of companies are adopting. And it's development and operations, and you have this cycle of planning, merge and build, and then you release and deploy, and you're monitoring. The question was, where does testing sit into that? And his answer was that testing fits in everywhere. You know, there is risk at every point of the way. In your planning sessions, are the requirements sound? even down to the release process, the operations, how you monitor, how do you know that that's correct? And you find that a lot of testers will focus on the functionality, but testing as a whole is a much bigger piece, and that's something that really keeps me driven to have a career in testing. Yeah, going back to those 12 values with the Agile Manifesto, there is a test manifesto that you can find online. So this is testing throughout versus testing at the end, preventing bugs over finding bugs, testing understanding versus just checking that functionality, building the best system versus breaking the system, and the team responsibility for quality. And again, this is something I go back to with my test practices. Are we preventing bugs, or are we just finding them? That increases the lifespan of your software development. Testing throughout versus just at the end. So a little bit on test analysis. The slides are shared at the end. I'm wary that I am flying through these quite quickly. So there's a classic tester joke that I hope some of you like. So a QA engineer or a tester walks into a bar, orders a beer, orders zero beers, etc. And it got me thinking that there's some silly inputs there. What would the output be? So I drew up a decision table. This is my expected results from the test cases given. And the punchline comes that the first real customer walked in and asked where the bathroom is. The bar burst into flames, killing everyone. You know, that scenario wasn't in your initial spec. Why wasn't it tested? And it comes to maybe the percent chance of that occurring. So I've made these values up, and with my initial inputs here, you know, it's a bar, people will order a beer. No one would order no beers. And if you look at the percentage of that happening, your other scenarios, your untested, is very high there. So if you then consider that from a customer perspective, you know, a customer would order a beer, a cocktail, if that takes your fancy, a few Jaeger bombs maybe, but where is X? There's a few different things that could input into that variable. And if you look at the percent chance, and you could pull off stats to maybe see the likelihood of these events occurring, your untested scenarios becomes much less. So it's that process of thinking about your customer, the valid inputs, as well as what can occur from, say, your front end. And again, mitigating that risk. Lastly, onto automation testing. It's something that many testers drive for in their testing careers, because it is possibly more exciting to them. To me, it's not the direction I was going, but it is an area of my remit in my roles. So why automation testing? It reduces the time for feedback. You gain greater coverage, and it allows for deeper manual and exploratory testing. So what does deeper testing mean? It's finding those unanticipated bugs, gives you that greater risk coverage. And what it does over time, you have a computer doing the tests for you while you can concentrate on those deeper manual tests. So just on automation testing again, and I couldn't find the original slides that prompted this, but it was a good visual that kind of inspired me, that automation testing can cover the knowns. Anything that has an expected result, you could assert on that with your tests. It then allows you to uncover the known unknowns. So that might be a double click on a back button, something that's not within the specification but will occur in real life. And then your deep, your unknown unknowns are probably those live issues that come up, and how can you mitigate them sooner with exploratory testing, with considering what could happen if I disable my cookies on the site. That's an unknown. We don't know what will happen. So with any automation tests, they have to be manageable and maintainable, and this is quite a downfall to many kind of test automation packs that I see. There's no metrics policing how your automation pack is performing. So are the tests adding value and maintainable? Are people upskilled on adding and removing tests? It's just as important to remove those tests that aren't needed anymore. And then the logging for failures and errors. But just to talk through a quick metric table here, the number of tests you could have one test that passes, and that could be sufficient. Or you could have 1,000. But along with all of these other metrics, the pass rate is at 100%. If they're failing, is confidence dropping in those tests? Then the speed of execution, if it takes 8 hours to run an automation test pack, that's too long. It's a work day before you get your feedback. If you then find an issue, fix it and rerun it, you're getting into a week. And if you're wanting to deploy 3, 4, 5 times a day to production, automation tests and that time is crucial. And then errors versus failures. So you find a lot of automation tests failing for errors, the environment they're using, the data. That's not what the tests are there to find. They're there to find the failures, the bugs. When you're asserting against those expectations, what is not passing. And it is quite important that errors are very low. The speed is quite low, and the pass rate is high to gain confidence in that pack. Consider how many times it will be run. Is it worth building that pack in the first place? So yeah, that's me. I feel I've rushed through that very quick, but just to recap, testing is about risk mitigation. Consider the manifesto. It's something throughout my career up to now that I will always go back to, and consider it against your own software development lifecycle. Mitigate live-like risks. Very, very often I find these inputs that may be considered an issue, but if a customer can't input that, is it worth the time that you're taking for a development team to look into it? Consider the likelihood of that happening. Is it a high risk? Is it low? And then automation allows for deeper testing. Yes, I think it is crucial in the current tech industry, but there's this deeper testing that testers will always be needed for. And keep learning. There's so many resources out there, so many webinars that are occurring in this lockdown period. Many books that you can go and buy and read, and yeah, that's something that I'd like to keep doing myself. That's everything. Thank you. I'll pass back to you, John.
Thank you very much, Phil. That was fascinating, and we've got some really good questions coming in. Don't forget, everybody, on your control panel on, I think, probably the right-hand side of your screen, there's a chat function. If you submit your questions there as they occur to you, then we'll collate them for the Q&A at the end. But in the meantime, thank you, Phil. That was fascinating, and we'll come back to you for the Q&A. Welcome back, Amber, and I'll hand control to you, if I may.
Are you sharing your screen with me, John?
I'm trying to. Somebody should have tested this.
Perfect. Okay. I think we might need to jump it back to the beginning. It's midway through the slideshow. It's not letting me do that at my side, John. I don't know whether you can jump it back to the beginning.
Bear with me while I do my best. Yes. Well then.
The joys of technology.
Very much so. There you are. I'll give you back control. Perfect. You've got control. Can you take that?
Yeah. Fab. It seems to have gone back to the later screen. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. So hi everybody, I'm Amber Hayward, and today I'm here to talk to you about my very, very diverse career so far and how I've ended up as an IT test manager. And I do have to give Sam, one of the organisers, credit for the clever name, A Testing Career. Okay, so when I was first asked to do this presentation, I did think to myself, why on earth do people want to hear about my journey? It's so random, it's so far from the norm. How will anybody be able to relate to it? But actually, there's loads of people within this profession from diverse career backgrounds who perhaps want to move up the ladder but think that they don't have the right experience or the right skill set. And it can be really refreshing to see someone else's journey who perhaps doesn't fit the typical mould and understand how skills from previous jobs that you may have done can be transferred to what you're doing now or what you want to do in the future. So I'm going to start off with an intro. I'll then go into talk about my very varied career pathway and how I feel each of the roles that I've done have benefited me along the way or provided me with transferable skills and experience which I can apply today. I'm also going to talk briefly about my passion for women in tech and finish with what advice I like to live by in my career and I suppose in life in general. And then if there's time at the end, I think John's opening up for questions. So who am I? My name is Amber Haywood and I'm a test manager within the retail IT function at Burberry. I live in Wakefield with my fiance and probably the sassiest French bulldog that you'll ever meet in your life. That picture that you can see in the middle there is a silly team challenge that we did to show how we were keeping spirits up during lockdown. And evidently for me, it's dressing my dog up and pretending she's a customer service agent. So I'm not sure what everyone else has been up to, but that's certainly kept my spirits up. The picture in the right is of our house mid-transformation. We've both spent a lot of time over the last few years renovating properties in our free time, and that's our house at the moment, which we're renovating. It's a long ongoing project of transforming avocado bathroom suites into something from this decade. As you can see from the photos along the bottom, I also love travelling and try to be on holiday every possible opportunity, which is proving to be a bit of a struggle at the moment. Okay, as you can see from the diagram above here, I've had one heck of a diverse career path so far, particularly at the very beginning of my career. And I always get asked how I ended up working in IT. And the honest answer is I don't quite know. I've never really been a person with a 10-year plan laid out. And in school, I certainly never said, when I grow up, I want to be a test manager. I didn't even know that role existed. And my journey to test manager has never involved hands-on testing as per the typical route into this role. What I have always had, though, is ambition, drive to succeed, to learn new things, to challenge myself, and to keep striving for more. So I'm going to just give you a bit of a recap sort of on my journey so far. So at the age of 2, my family moved to a tiny coastal town in the north of Scotland because my dad was posted there with the military. And because my parents couldn't find a nursery school that they thought was good enough for me and my sister, they opened their own one in the downstairs of our family home. When I was about 12, my parents started a villa rental company selling holiday lettings in Florida and Spain. And my sister and I, from a young age, were taught how to draft up email replies, answer the phone to customers, and make updates to the company website. Fast forward a few more years, and the family have a chain of 4 nursery schools, and I'd qualified as an early years educator after completing my level 3 MVQ alongside my GCSEs. On top of that, my parents opened a hair and beauty salon, which was my mum's original trade. So I worked there on weekends and became a qualified beauty therapist and nail technician. When I look back now, I honestly have no idea how they managed to juggle 3 successful businesses and 2 children, but I genuinely think that growing up, seeing how hard they worked has contributed to sort of a strong work ethic. So at 16, I was supervising a team of nursery nurses and dealing with irate customers whose massage had been 3 minutes shorter than they wanted it to be. But all of that helped to develop maturity, confidence, conflict resolution, relationship building, and communication skills, all absolute essentials to the job that I'm doing now. But after finishing my A-levels, I still had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do, which I'm sure many people can relate to. So I decided to go to uni and study business management because it was a good all-rounder which I could apply to any job that I decided to go into. And during the uni holidays, I worked as a children's rep in the first choice holiday villages in Mallorca, Rhodes and Sharm el-Sheikh, which gave me consumer insight like never before. As much of a laugh as that job sounds, it came with a whole set of unique challenges, one of them keeping a smile on my face whilst I was dressed as Shrek in 38 degrees heat. In the 3-star resorts, I was dealing with missing children and parents who'd been drunk from the all-inclusive since 10 a.m. And in the 5-star resorts, I was dealing with spoiled children screaming when they realised it was a sticker book inside the parcel and not an iPad. Now, you might wonder what any of that has to do with test management, but there was a huge amount of soft skills being developed there. Managing expectations, dealing with difficult customers, negotiation, crisis management, stakeholder management, empathy, definitely patience, all things to apply to a role when you're managing people and managing change. In 2011, I graduated and started looking for roles within big city corporates because I knew that our little Scottish town couldn't give me the job opportunities that I was looking for. Fired my CV out to loads of places and got a response back from O2 or Telefonica, inviting me to a series of interviews and an assessment centre for their advanced apprenticeship programme. I've got a little anecdote on the next slide to share with you about how I got the job. But once I was on the programme, they assigned us to 6 months rotational placements in different areas of the business, where we'll learn all about the corporate world, how projects were run, the complexities of business process, finance, the importance of quality, and the significance of customer experience. The 2 years of rotations gave me a fantastic insight into the world of internal financial services, project management, and test management. And I actively sought out roles and placements throughout that programme that would benefit me in my future career. The world of technology, as we know, is massively complex, so my eyes were open to the costs and complexities of running a project or launching a new product and service, the catastrophic impacts if something goes wrong, and why risk mitigation is so crucial. Still to this day, I have family and friends asking me things like, why does it take so long to swap out a tilling system in a store? Can't you just unplug the old one and plug the new one back in? And I'm sure everyone on the call is face palming right now because they've probably been asked a similar thing from somebody within their friendship group. But doing those rotations and having that network of contacts from around the business was absolutely invaluable. And I probably knew more people in that short space of time from moving around the business than fellow colleagues who'd been in the company for 20 years. After completing the apprenticeship programme, I transferred into a role as a project test lead, managing various testing work streams on billing projects, network projects, digital projects, working with a new team on almost every one, and overseeing both manual and automated test execution. I was responsible for creating test strategies, representing testing on project calls, managing resources internally, externally, locally, and offshore, witnessing the struggles firsthand of connectivity issues, time differences, behavioural culture, and remote team management. In 2018, I moved into a project manager role within the sales and retention team at O2, managing omni-channel changes within our stores, call centres, and online. And it was really exciting to see changes that I could, or be part of changes that I could actually see, rather than background system updates or changes to things like 4G infrastructure. The most notable project was probably a brand refresh with UK grime artist Stormzy, if anybody's a fan. During my time at O2, my fiance and I took a 6-month sabbatical and travelled Australia and Asia, which was hands down the best experience of my life. My family were worried that would be detrimental to my career and I needed to climb further up the ladder before taking so much time out, but I actually feel the opposite. Seeing the world through a very local lens, spending time with local people, trying local food, it broadens your mind to different cultures, gives you a fresh perspective and makes you a more rounded individual. And actually, when I had my first phone interview with Burberry, the fact that I had travelled and with them being a global company, that was actually a selling point for them. And my role now, and my role for the last 2 years, has been at Burberry as the test manager for retail IT, managing the testing of IT kit and changes within our retail stores globally, and looking after a team of third-party test resources. I was brought in initially to build a best practice strategic framework for how testing should be done within our space, implemented a shift left approach, led a large piece of automation transformation work, which has massively reduced our regression time, and also managed the end-to-end sourcing and transfer of our previous third-party test supplier over to our current test supplier, which involves cross-continent kit and handovers. An incredible brand to work for, and the luxury customer market never fails to fascinate me. Another thing that I'm very passionate about and a huge ambassador for is women in tech, or women in STEM, women in IT. And I've been part of numerous initiatives over the years to go into schools and speak to young girls about the career opportunities within these areas and normalise the idea of women doing these roles. While society, I think, has made huge steps in the right direction in recent years, I still do find myself in the minority of women at test and IT conferences, and I still think there's more can be done because the unconscious bias is absolutely still there. I've been at events before with older male colleagues and been asked if I was their PA. In my very early career, I had a risk raised formally about me in a project raid log from a senior program manager who I'd never worked with before because I was a young girl and he didn't know if I was capable. And actually, just the other week, our retail director asked an event organizer to forward an invite on to the test manager, which was me, and the person responded with, "Sure, send me his email address." Now, I'm not saying any of that was done maliciously or purposefully, but the point that I'm trying to make is that the natural assumption there is that these roles will be filled by men. A 2018 study by the PwC showed that only 23% of people working in STEM roles across the UK are female. And of the 2,000 plus university-age students asked, only 27% of female respondents said they would consider a career in technology, compared to the 62% of males. But I don't think this is a problem that's originating in the workplace, and I would certainly only ever want to be given a job on my own merit and not to take a quota. But for me, the problems start at school age. So young girls are still of the mindset that computers are for boys. And in my experience doing these events, when asked to draw a business or an IT person, the vast majority of young women will draw a man without hesitation. I don't feel there's enough female role models in the public eye for girls to aspire to, and there's not enough focus on it within the early education sector. So I think this is where we need the biggest change, because it's too late to start preaching about this in the workplace when views have already been shaped. We need to start from the very bottom so that mindsets can be moulded at a younger age. I could talk about this forever, but I'll leave it there. But I'd love to hear what other people have to think about this in the chat function and later on after the presentation. I'm now going to talk to you a little bit about my career advice. So believe in yourself, which I know is the world's worst cliche. And to be honest, I didn't really want to use that phrase, but I do think it's the best way to sum it up. So as cliche as it sounds, you do have to have confidence to seize a new opportunity. You might think that it's too big a step for you or that you're not going to get the job, but literally what have you got to lose? It's a few hours out of your day to attend an interview, some prep time beforehand. The worst comes to worst, you don't get the job. And so what? You're in the same position that you were in before and you've lost nothing. And I like this phrase when people say, do you know how many knockbacks Beyonce had before she went on to conquer the world? So bear that one in mind. But the upsides of going for a job, even if you don't get it, are you've had some real interview experience, you've built your confidence, and you're on people's radar for other future positions. So always go for it. When I was approached about my current role at Burberry, I thought, no, they've got this wrong. They want all of this hands-on technical experience. They want someone with a coding background. It's just not me. I'm not the person that they're looking for. But what I could do is manage a team located around the globe, coordinate multiple work streams, influence and motivate people, identify areas for improvement, share best practice, and introduce more efficient ways of working. So everyone has their own skill set and their own unique talents to bring to the table. Sometimes it won't be what they're looking for and sometimes it will, but take that leap of faith. And on those occasions where it does turn out well, that's where you springboard. The next one is it's okay not to be an expert at everything and appreciate the strengths within your team. So you're never going to know everything about everything. If you have a team of people who are great at what they do, then trust them and make the most of their abilities and their skill set. Don't be afraid to work with people who are better than you are. I am absolutely not a techie, never claimed to be, and there are people in my team who know far more than me about robotic process automation or performance testing, and I will always beam them up, give them credit where it's due, and when I need to go to them for advice, then I absolutely will. And in my experience, being asked to share that knowledge is a real confidence booster that makes the team feel valued and respected. So having a strong team should never be seen as anything but a huge positive. And you know what? Don't be afraid to ask the stupid questions. Early in my career, I found myself nodding along on calls and in meetings, thinking I don't understand half of what people are talking about here and not wanting to speak up and look stupid. But actually 9 out of 10 times someone else is thinking the same thing. So ask the question and get the clarity. And actually techie people love speaking about techie things anyway, so there's always someone willing to help. Build your network. Take advantage of job shadowing. Arrange coffee catch-ups with people in other areas of the business. Go to networking events and conferences. Seize opportunities to broaden your network and become a go-to person for other departments. It's all well and good doing a great job, but if nobody knows who you are or what you're doing, then it becomes redundant. Mentoring is another very powerful tool. So get a mentor or become a mentor yourself. There's many companies that offer mentoring programs, and yours might do so already, and you probably just don't know about it. So definitely look into that. We do something at Burberry that's called Coffee Roulette, where you're assigned a different person from another area of the business. And once a month, you go and meet them for a coffee and have a chat about what you do, what they do, and then it gives you a go-to person or a contact in another area for the future. It's kind of like professional blind date. Soft skills are more valuable. So whilst I appreciate that you couldn't perform open heart surgery with great communication skills alone, in my line of work and in my experience, the soft skills are often more important than the hard skills or the learned skills. So you can send someone on a course to learn the principles of automation, but it's not so easy to teach someone how to be an effective leader. And it's far more common than you think for an individual to be offered a job based on their personality, their work ethic, and their natural fit for the team over the qualifications that they have on paper. And I've actually seen somebody within our team directly at Burberry who met 60% of the technical job description criteria, that was offered the role because of how he came across in the interview, over a person who met 90% of the technical job description criteria but didn't demonstrate the same soft skills. And on my previous slide, I was alluding to earlier with my O2 apprenticeship scheme, when I had the interview for that, part of the apprenticeship assessment centre was to give a 5-minute presentation to a room full of very senior leaders and other applicants. And there was other candidates speaking about things like the evolution of the iPhone or what technology will look like in 50 years' time. But my presentation was an interactive Malteser challenge with everyone on their feet competing in teams. I commanded the room and it was memorable, so I got the job. And finally, be authentic. If you're trying to be something you're not, everyone will be able to see through it, and it's absolutely exhausting to keep up a facade, so just be yourself. Part of what makes a working team so successful is the diverse people within it, the different views and opinions, the experiences that each person's had, their background, their values and their beliefs, and you can learn so much from one another. Nothing's more limiting than a team who all think in exactly the same way, so hold on to your true authentic self. I've also included some great quotes that I think help summarise some of the points that I've made. So we've got this one here from Christine Kane, which is to build a strong team, you must see someone else's strength as a complement to your weakness, not a threat to your position or authority, which I love, and that one really resonates with me. No one can whistle a symphony, it takes a whole orchestra to play it. So it doesn't matter how good a job you can do on your own, you will always need other people backing you up, you'll always need other people there for support. So it does take the whole team to deliver something right. And finally, this one makes me smile. So sometimes I pretend to be normal, but it gets boring, so I go back to being me. And yeah, I like that one. So that's my career advice. And that is everything from me. I don't know whether I've finished a little bit earlier than anticipated, John, but it opens up a bit more time for questions now.
It does, and we've got lots. Phil, if you and I come back and I take back control of my PC, I can look at the questions panel and share them with you. Both of you have majored on the soft skills and the learning. Have you got any advice for growing soft skills? Phil?
Yeah, so as I say, there's books out there that you can read. There's one I read recently called Surrounded by Idiots, and the idea is that you can kind of categorize behaviors, but what it does, it helps you understand why people act the way they are, and how you adapt yourself to that. So it tells me I'm quite a blue person, which means I need to know the technical detail before I start with things, but someone who's a red is quite authoritative, maybe gets a bit angry, and that's okay, but it just teaches you how to deal with that. And I guess talking to other people, you know, understanding what drives other people, what they want from you, and listening. It is all about listening. That's something people often forget.
Yeah, I think Phil makes a really good point there. We've done loads of things like that in various companies, things like insights and the strengths deployment inventory, where you talk about different personalities and how you you can work best with people. And I think that's such an important thing, because you might see somebody that's a red, for example, a fellow red might see them as really charismatic and confident, but somebody that's not a red might see that red as sort of bossy or cocky, and it's how the person's perceived based on what their personality type is. So we've done a lot of that, and I think that's really important to understand the team that you're working with. Another thing that I found is really useful for demonstrating softer skills is to kind of mirror or shadow somebody who you look up to. So if there's somebody that you work with, or perhaps a senior leader whose traits you really admire, maybe you like the way that they speak to people, or you like the way that they can control a room, or they can influence people, then learn from that. So spend time with that, maybe do some shadowing, ask them to be a mentor, and see what you can learn from the people around you. And I think a lot of it's just confidence. I think it grows over time with the roles that you do. I know certainly when I first started working for O2, I'd be absolutely, crapping myself just going for a simple meeting, and now you do it all day, every day. So it's, I think that just comes with time.
It's interesting that two questioners have picked up on your background before you got into a position of leadership. Phil, for you, a questioner has pointed out that your background was in testing and asks how you make the leap into squad leadership. And for you, Amber, a different questioner has asked, do you see the fact that you didn't do hands-on testing first as any sort of an obstacle to leading in the world of testing? Phil, what do you make of that?
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, a lot of people will say that they fall into testing, but when I got the role in testing and I did my ICEB, a big part was when I moved Leeds from Manchester, and the community within Leeds for testing. There's meetups that I started to attend. So there's the tester gathering and others. And when you start talking to other people who have that background and that passion, it drives you to point you in the direction or guide you as to what's your next step, what do you want to learn. And as I say, just speaking to people with that passion for testing, look at online blogs. Twitter is a big inspiration for me. There's a lot of great people tweeting daily about agile, about testing, and you can take that into your role day to day. Yeah.
Amber, your view.
Yeah, I think it's a good question, and it's certainly something that that has kind of crossed my mind over the last few years, around, because I didn't come from that background. Has it been an obstacle? I don't think it's been an obstacle. I think it's maybe made things a little bit more challenging because I don't have that hands-on experience that other people may have. But actually, I think that's helped with my role in terms of not getting too bogged down in the detail. My role now is kind of more strategic, more at an overseeing level. And by not having that, you have the team members in place that can do the job very well. You have the trust in them, and that's the people that you rely on, and you work together as more of a team. So I think by not having that, you have maybe a different lens where you're looking at the bigger picture rather than being stuck in the detail. So I think there's benefits to both, certainly, but for me, I've kind of let go of that now. That's not what my background was, and it's not held me back now. So.
A number of questioners have picked up on the emphasis you've both laid on keeping learning. And there's a question about resources. Can you recommend any resources? But before you do, there's a question that's quite perceptively asked, how valuable do you think the certifications are as against gaining experience? And how do you fit in separately the time to pick up the learning that you need to do? Amber, what do you make of that?
So controversially, I think a lot of the qualifications that would maybe lead up to these roles, so I've got my ICEB as well, I've got my ISTQB, Certified Agile Tester, and so on. Have I used them in my everyday role? Probably not. Do they look good on a CV when you're trying to apply for a job? Yes, probably. So in all honesty, sometimes maybe you need them to get your foot through the door. I don't know necessarily that I've used them then throughout my career. I mean, I think probably the very first one of ISTQB is at the foundation. that one gives you a very good platform to start your career on. It gives you all the basics. So I think probably that one, yeah, useful. The other ones, I think it's more of a kind of a tick in the box, and you've got the paperwork there on your CV, if I'm being 100% honest.
Phil, your view?
Yeah. For me, the ICEB Foundation opened the book. It gave me that entry point into testing, taught me the foundations. So personally, it was a very valuable experience. It was only 5 or 6 months into my role at the bank that I did the ICEB Foundation. But there's such a wealth of resource online these days that I only have my foundation ICEB and nothing further. There's so many, as I say, resources that you can pull from that I think it's about maybe the business that you find and the value you're adding to that business. And if they see that value, you know, the agile ways of working and the tech industry is so smooth, you need to adapt with it. If you don't, you will fall behind. And it's keeping in touch with what's relevant. And qualifications aren't necessarily the things that do that, but in some cases it may be.
Yeah, because for you, Phil, I mean, like you said, that gave you the good starting block, which I completely agree with. It gives you that overview that you've got to the position that you're at now with nothing further, and I guess that shows that you don't need that necessarily. It's not a blocker.
Yeah,
I think as well.
I think
just
a lot of people.
No, you go, Phil. You go.
Just a lot of people in my kind of progression through Jet2 would say I was very lucky with the positions I was getting, but I think it's the preparation for the opportunities that come up. I was taking a lot of my own personal time going to these meetups, looking at online resources, but I felt I was preparing myself to grow with the business, and Jet2 was booming at the time, and it's given me that wealth of kind of experience now to move into different roles and look for what I want, what makes me happy.
Did you find that the more you prepared and the more that you thought about it, the luckier you seemed to be?
I was just about to say that. Yeah. The harder you work, the luckier you got. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
That's it.
Here's an interesting one, extending your leadership skills into the wider business and showing the value of what you do. A questioner asks, when deadlines get squeezed, it's inevitably the testers who suffer by having their time compromised, a proposition I'm sure you agree with.
Yeah.
How have you, nods all around, I suspect, among our attenders, how do you react to this and how do you ensure you get the time you need to complete the testing? Amber, what do you make of that?
So for me, I guess it depends on what's being delivered. If it's something that is maybe a nice to have and they just want to cut the timescales back to save costs, then you've definitely got more of a fight on your hands to say, if you want this doing properly, if you want to save time and cost later down the line, then we need to get that quality right up front. If it's something, for example, that might be a compliance change, it's got to be in 2 weeks' time, or you're going to be heavily fined, then sometimes you have to bite the bullet. But for me, it's just about being very transparent. If we have only got 2 weeks to deliver something, this is what we're going to be able to, to test. These are what the risks are. This is how we're going to mitigate them, and you need to sign off that you've understood what those risks are and that you're willing to accept them if you need that change or that project to be delivered within that short time scale. So I think it is very dependent on what the change is. If you have, if there's scope for more time and people are just trying to squash costs, then I would certainly argue what the value of testing was and make sure people appreciated what that work up front helped later down the line.
Does that resonate with you, Phil?
Yes, yeah. Just to echo what Amber was saying there, and for me, it's that you have the same number of hours in the day as anyone else, and when projects are getting squeezed, I think you have to remain calm and say, this is the resource we have, this is the amount of testing we can get done. If you want to go live, that's your decision. If you want more risk mitigated, we need that extra time. So as I say, you just have to be transparent, as Amber said, and be open about what you can achieve in that time.
Yeah, and have you seen the diagram? It's sort of got a little beetle that's really small at the conception stage of a project, and then it gets gradually bigger and bigger, and it just shows the cost of resolving a defect or resolving a problem as you move through the project life cycle. So it's spending that time up front to squash that problem, because if you leave it until the end, or you leave it until you're about to deploy or when you've gone live, it's a much bigger problem.
That makes sense. So a lot of this is about communication and leadership and influencing. A questioner asks, what is your advice when you don't have a strong leader in your team? Something, of course, we wouldn't need to give to either of your teams. What would you say? Have you experienced it? Phil?
Yeah, I would say I've experienced weak leadership, but I've definitely had situations where I've disagreed with maybe my boss or the leader of the team, and I think it is possibly not taking those blows personally. Talk it through professionally. If the lead disagrees, it's maybe trying to push towards that team agreement, and accepting sometimes maybe it's better for the whole team to go with a different view to what you have. But if your leader is weak in making decisions or pushing things forward, then that's an opportunity for you to maybe step forward and maybe network wider than the team you're in, talk to other people, and yeah, I guess just conversations, I guess.
Amber?
Yeah, and I think if you're looking at things like personal development, when you have a weak leader, then maybe take control of that yourself. So sometimes I've had it in the past where I've had a manager, he was a lovely guy, but he'd have sort of any drive. We didn't catch up very often. There was no kind of push to strive and learn new things and take on new challenges. So I think sometimes you have to take that ownership amongst yourself. Also, when I spoke earlier about having a strong mentor, that's something that you can go out and source yourself. That's effectively another leader. It's someone for you to look up to. So you can take control of that. You can find somebody who you do admire that has traits that you'd like to have yourself, and use them as that sort of leadership inspiration if you don't have that directly within your own team. So that would be my advice. Don't feel like you're restricted because of a hierarchy or an org structure.
So in many ways, weak leadership above you is an opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it is.
There is a lot of questions. There's a lot of questions, as you might imagine, about automated testing versus manual testing. There's a catch-all question that has been asked. Can automated testing ever replace manual testing in its entirety?
Oh, I love this debate.
I'm sure it's a common debate amongst testers. Phil, what's your view?
The quick answer is no, it won't, but it may be possible to consider the type of testing it replaces. So automation will replace the manual testing that has those expected results. And I think as testers, we are quite curious as to how things behave, how things work. So if it doesn't necessarily have to be yourself, if someone with a skill set creates an automation test pack that runs through tests that check all of the expected results, it allows you to then go into those deeper unknowns, as I mentioned earlier, as to what are the risks within the interface or how this product will work. In my current role, we don't have an interface, it's all message queues, and it's something very different to my e-commerce background. It's quite exciting to understand how risks can occur with the types of values that are sent into us. And we can automate a lot of that because it's very expected. But there are unknowns within projects that help us input into the requirements. We're building the right product, going back to the testing manifesto. So in short, no, I don't think it will.
Amber, do you agree?
Yeah, I've got to agree with Phil. I think, like Phil said, it depends on the type of testing that you're doing. If it's something that's repetitive, if it's regression, if you're going to be running it multiple times a week or a month, then it's definitely worthwhile having your tests automated. If it's things that you maybe only run once a year, or you want to run it as a one-time change and then not again, then there's not value in putting that investment in to automate scripts. It might take 5 times longer than it would to run it manually. So you definitely have to look at the context. I also feel that automation testing should never replace things like UAT, or at least partial UAT. So for us, if we're deploying a change out to a store, or it's a luxury customer market, it's really, really crucial for us to have that input from business representatives or store associates to say, okay, well, maybe it does what it's meant to do. Maybe the button clicks to the right place, and maybe, you know, the prompts come up at the right time. But actually, is it easy to use? Is the customer going to be stood there for 10 minutes whilst I go through this process? Is it simple to understand? How will the staff take it? Will they be able to, you know, will they be reluctant to the change? And there's all sorts of things that I think can't be done by a computer, by a robot. So in my eyes, short answer, no. And yeah, I think it depends on the testing.
Well, doing what we do, I'm quite glad to hear it. Amber, you talked about women in IT. A questioner has asked a very good question. What are your ideas for encouraging more girls, specifically girls, you were talking about school age, rather than women, to consider a career in IT?
So I've been part of a few different initiatives over the years, maybe not so much in Burberry as I was with O2, which is just a time dependent thing, but something that I was really passionate about within IT was something called, within O2, sorry, was called Inspiring You. And that was all about bringing young girls from local schools into our offices to see the environment, to see the roles that were involved within IT, and to try and change that mindset. So I think for me, I'd love to be involved in more things like that, to go in and say, hey, look, you know, I'm a young female, I'm working in IT, we're doing this thing, which is fun, we're involved with this project, which is really cool, and just changing that mindset. And I really do believe it's from a young age that we need to make that change, because by the time, you know, we're in the workplace or we're at university, people know what they want to do, or they've got their set beliefs and values. It needs to be right from that young age. So I don't know necessarily, you know, what I'm going to do from now to shape that. But I'd certainly love to be involved with more things in schools, career presentations, any opportunities like that, go in and get the message across 100%.
Phil, what's your view about encouraging more women into IT, or more girls into starting careers in IT, in testing in particular?
Yeah, I guess even in my maybe short career in testing, that I've seen much more women getting involved in those types of roles. And again, in Leeds, there's a growing community. There's a lot of women in tech events, encouraging that. And going back to Amber said there about starting early, getting society in a place where it's not an afterthought. It's part of growing up, that young girls and grow into these kind of IT roles, and they know the skill sets, and it's not a male-dominated market. There is no difference, I guess.
Yeah, and I remember reading this statistic about when women see a job description, on average, unless they meet 90% of the criteria, they won't apply for the role, whereas men will read the job description, and if they meet 60% of the criteria, they'll apply. So I don't know whether maybe it's a confidence thing, but I think maybe making things like CVs more female friendly as well. Some of the things that you'll see on not CVs, sorry, job descriptions, some of the things you'll see on job descriptions are so specific around, you know, you've got to have experience with Python and so on. And there's things like that on the job description for the job I've got now. It's absolutely not needed. So I think cutting back on some of that, otherwise you're losing out on huge potential talent, in my opinion. Yes,
it's good advice. Thank you for that. We're coming towards the end of the webinar now, so 30 seconds each, please. We've been asked by a number of people what the most difficult and challenging parts of what you do amount to. Amber, can you tell us, please?
Oh, okay. I think one of the biggest challenges is probably working with so many countries around the globe and so many different time zones and so many different expectations. So within my line of work, you've got customers in APAC have completely different expectations to customers in America, and it's about understanding that global remit. So for me, it's not just deploying deploying changes to multiple different places with multiple different things to consider. So that's probably one of my biggest challenges.
Phil, for you?
Personally, I don't see myself as much of a people person, but it's part of my role and part of what I do. And I think networking within your company is for me, it feels quite difficult, but people say it comes quite naturally to me. So it feels difficult, as I say, but it's a big part of my role and something that I need to keep doing as new people enter the business and different roles change and tech adapts to the types of roles we do.
So at the end of it all, no matter how technical we need to be, it all comes down to people and what they expect of us. Thank you very much. Thank you to both of you. You've given us some really interesting insights into the progression of your careers and some fantastic advice. Please do, everybody who's attended, answer the one question survey when this webinar closes, as it will in just a moment. And also in an hour, you will receive an email seeking feedback so that we can make the next Future Elite webinars even better. I hope you found this one interesting and I hope you found it useful. Thank you for attending and goodbye.
Thanks very much. Thanks guys. Cheers, Phil. Bye.
Bye.